Okay, welcome to Chapter 11 in the Glencoe Geometry book. Chapter 11 is about area, and area is something that most of us have been familiar with since elementary school, but it's good before we start talking about areas of different shapes and formulas and how to find area if we just talk about what is area for a second. The definition you see on the screen there says that area is the amount of surface a two-dimensional shape covers. Now I really like that they use this word surface here. It also says that the area is measured in square units. And that's going to be important too, but we'll get to that in a second. Let's just talk about this word surface. Sometimes people use the word space to talk about area. They say it's the space inside of a shape. But that can be misleading because then that causes us to get confused with volume. And volume is going to be important, and we'll talk about that later. But I think I like this word surface here because it really helps me understand that area is about something flat. So it's the amount of surface a two-dimensional shape covers. The surface is something that's flat. Now, here they say it's measured in square units, and I like this picture that I have here, where you can see the one line segment is just 1 inch, so that represents a unit of length, 1 inch here. So this we see right here is a unit of length, 1 inch. Now over here, this is a unit of area, which is a square inch. And we use IN to abbreviate inch, and then we just use a little exponent of 2 to show that it's squared, just like you would with a number. And the reason this is 1 inch squared is because this is really a square where each side is 1 inch. 1 inch, 1 inch, 1 inch. That looks like I wrote Lynn a whole bunch of times like I'm some sort of New York Knicks fan. But no, that's supposed to be 1, 1, 1, 1 inch. So we have 1 inch all around, and so it's a square where each side is 1 inch, so it's 1 inch squared. Another thing, we talked about how people sometimes confuse area with volume. People also sometimes confuse area with perimeter. The area of this square, where each side is 1 inch, the area is 1 inch squared. That's our area. The perimeter, the distance around the outside, for perimeter, let's use a different color. Let's use red. For perimeter, which we'll say perimeter is the distance all the way around. My eyes are no good on this. That's going to be 4 inches, because all the way around, if we traced our square, all the way around here, this distance is 4 inches. Notice that perimeter is a length, so it's just measured in inches, versus area, which is measured in square inches or square units. We could use, there's nothing special about inches here. We could use centimeters, we could use meters, we could use miles, feet, whatever you want. I'm just using inches for no real reason here. Okay, so that's really what area is. It's the amount of surface a two-dimensional shape covers, and it's measured in square units. Okay. Now, here we have a rectangle, and it says, what is the area of this rectangle? And a lot of people know that the formula for the area of a rectangle is base times height. So here we'll write that down. We'll say that area equals base times height. And we can also, some people prefer to say that area is equal to length. Oops, what happened there? Not sure what happened there. It's not letting me erase it, so let's just erase that. Length times width. Some people say base times height, some people say length times width. Doesn't really matter. What is important is that you have one sort of side of the rectangle multiplied by another side of the rectangle. I use a cursive L just so you don't confuse it with a 1. Alright, so what is the area of the rectangle shown below? So using either one of these formulas, we can see that the area is equal to 3 inches times 2 inches. 3 inches times 2 inches is 6 inches squared. Now that's probably a formula that you're familiar with, but we, as always, want to focus. Having trouble switching pen colors here. We want to focus on the question why. Why does that formula tell us the area? Because we know that in the previous slide we said that area represents the number of square units that fit on the surface of my shape. So if we look at another picture here of the same rectangle, I think that makes it a little more clear why the area works out to be this. So we have the same exact rectangle here, 3 inches by 2 inches, and you can see, you can count 1 inch squared, 2 inch squared, 3 inches squared, 4 inches squared, 5 inches squared, 6 inches squared. So the area here keeps doing that to me here. That's interesting. Anyway, the area here is 6 inches squared. So again, when we talk about area, we mean how many square inches or how many square units, if we're using something different than inches. How many square units fit on the surface of your shape? And here there are 6. And there are 6 because you have on the top, I know that there are 3 columns, and on the left it tells me that there are 2 rows. So 3 columns of 2 rows is 6 inches squared. Let's look at another example where, and this one throws some people off a little bit, so let's look at this next example. Now if we look at this, this looks almost exactly the same as the last 2 slides, just sort of put together, but there's one major difference, and the major difference here is that we're now using decimals. Oops, I should not have done that. Alright, so forgive my tracing there. The issue here again is that we have decimals. Much nicer. We have 1 on each side, in fact, and that's okay, and we'll see why that's okay here. Remember that the area still just means how many square units, in this case inches, fit inside the shape. So I can draw them out and just cut my shape into square units here. This is, again, just like we did before. This is 1, 2, I'm just counting as I go along here, 3, 4, 5, 6. So I've got those 6 whole square inches, but then I have these fraction pieces, because this is 1 inch, this is 1 inch, this is a 2nd inch, and then here's my 1/2 inch. Same up here, 1 inch, another inch, a 1/3 inch, and then a 1/2 inch. So this little piece here is 0.5 by 1, or 1/2 an inch. Same thing down here. This is again, this square, or this rectangle here has the same dimensions as that. They're each going to be 1/2 a square inch. So together, these two create 7. These two here on the bottom left, those also are 2 halves, which creates another whole. So that's 8 square inches. Then we have another 0.5, and then this little guy is 1/2 an inch by 1/2 an inch, which is 0.25 inches. So these two together, I'm going to do that actually for these. I'm going to circle, say that those two go together, and these two go together. These two down here, where it's 1/2 a square inch and then 0.25 or 1/4 of a square inch, that is 1/2 plus 1/4 is 0.75. So we've got 8.75 inches squared for my area. I can count them. And like we saw before, you can also just multiply here. We know that area of a rectangle is equal to 3.5 inches times 2.5 inches. And you can double check that 3.5 times 2.5 is 8.75 inches. And here it's squared because, again, area means inches squared, but also because you have inches times inches. Anything multiplied by itself is the same as saying squared. So, inches, 3.5 inches times 2.5 inches, multiply the 3.5, and the 2.5 to get 8.75. Multiply the inches here times the inches here to get inches squared. And that's really what area means. Area means how many square units fit inside the surface, or fit on the surface of some two-dimensional shape. And when we say square units, we can literally draw those square units and count out how many there are. And when you do that with a rectangle, you see that multiplying gets you the same answer. And we'll talk about other formulas for other shapes in another video. But for now, that's the basic introduction to what area is. All right. Good luck.